So now that we've got our bubble chart rendering, something that we need to do is work on our smaller bubble chart here. And let me pull up that. So we've got things grouped. Notice we have 3 different colors here for each of the hospitals. And then we have this price. This is a grouped average price. So we need to generate this average price across all 1, 2, or 3, depending on which data sets we have available across all of those hospitals. And then we also need to get these grouped together just in general. So we have to map these by code. So that's how this is drawn out here. As the idea these are grouped all under the same DRG code. So then we will have an average price of average prices. So I'll just click through here again, just take a look at things. So the app's up and running. I've run npm start to get that going. And then I've got hospital data, source, app.js. I just opened app.js here before we hit record. And so just like we've done our other ones, we'll just start here at the bottom of app.js under source. And let's throw in a different chart. So I'm just going to copy that route that already existed. And this will be chart / group, or we could group, whatever you want to call it there. And so we will make a group chart component to go along with that. So we will add a new link. And so we'll just put that underneath bubble chart. We will make a group chart. And we may not leave those set, as these all different pages, but it just makes it easy to isolate those components. I'll finally remember to delete those. Those have been hanging around for a while. We're not using them yet, so we don't need to put them in there. And then finally, we'll need to do this import here at the top. We will need to import group chart from group chart. So once we've got those together, we can hit save. Obviously, it's going to fail to compile, so we don't have that. I'm just going to right-click. I'm up under source components. I'm going to right-click on bubble chart and hit copy. Then I'm going to right-click on the components folder and hit paste here. And so notice we have bubble chart 1. I'm just going to right-click on that and rename that, and that'll be called group chart. So we'll hit enter, and then I'm just going to hit save back here on our app.js. What's it still complaining out? Group chart, components. Did I misspell something? Bubble chart, group chart, components. Oh, well, yeah, we have to change the value. So let's open group chart, index.js. We need to change the name of this. This is no longer our bubble chart. This is now our group chart. And so we will scroll down to the bottom and just change the name in both those places. Group chart in both places. Let's save app.js again. It's still complaining. No such file directory. Did I paste in the right place? Source components, bubble chart. Source components, group chart, index.js. Class group chart extends component. That looks correct. At the very bottom of the file, export default group chart. Those all look correct. I'm just going to hit Control C here, and I'm just going to fire off npm start again, because all of that looks correct. Let's see if something was just cached. Looks like it's starting. Just close that other tab while it starts up. And yeah, so it's up now. Now we have group chart, and we can click on that. Now, obviously, it's just re-rendering that bubble chart, but that's fine. That gives us a good starting point. And I'm just going to make a new file here and Control-Shift-P, change language mode, and yeah, Babel JavaScript's fine. So I just want to write this out for a second. The data we have now, we have an array, and inside this array, we have several objects. Now, if we were wanting to group those, we think back to the way we worked with the automotive car data when we made a tree out of that data. We need to make an object, and then that object will have a key. And so we're going to group these by DRG code. So it'll just be like the number 3. And then inside there is going to be another object. And we're going to have keys in here. We'll use the hospital name. So we'll have UNC. And then that'll be some other object. So this is the idea. We're turning this list of things where this would have DRG code 3, name, UNC. We're taking this data and we're turning it into a tree, and we're grouping them so there would only be one DRG code, and under it would be any and all of the hospitals that we have information for that code. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to mutate that data and transform it from an array into this hierarchical tree structure and group that data together. So we're going to do that up here inside the constructor of our group chart. So I'm going to just close that file where we sketch that out. And we can leave this as is. We still need this information. We still need Duke data and all of that. But instead, we're going to make now a new data structure. So we're going to have, let's do that, const grouped data equals some object. And we're going to fill in the blanks around that object. And then we're going to track the average price as well. That's the other piece we need. If we go back and reference this, we're going to need to generate all of three of these are going to have an average price. So we need to make an average of the averages. And so we'll put that in the group data as well. So to get started, I already know just from messing around with this data the past few days that none of these have the same amount of records. And I want to just walk through these record sets from starting with the data set that has the most records. And that way we're always starting at a place that we ensure we have the most coverage, and we'll walk through them in order. And it's possible that we miss a couple things, and that's okay. We're not writing, scientifically accurate study-based code. But we're just going to get some things in here where we can pull out the top 20 most expensive items. And so before we manipulate that grouped data, I'm just going to make another variable here. We'll say const, and this will be my metadata. And my metadata is going to be equal to, we're going to make this an array because we want to sort it. And our metadata is going to have three objects in it. And it's going to have the name. We're going to hard code that, UNC. And then this is going to contain this dot UNC data. And so we can put this under the key data. So we're mapping this name and then UNC data. So I'm just going to copy this. Actually, we'll paste this in twice. And now I'll switch these. So this is UNC, Duke, and Wake Med. And then just switch over the data so that name Wake Med points to data, this.WakeMed data, and same thing for Duke. So name Duke data, this.Duke data. So this metadata now, I want to sort it. I want to sort this array. So just like we were doing in the previous videos, I'm showing you how to sort different things. We're going to say metadata.sort, and we're going to pass in, this is going to take two parameters, A and B. So it's the two things that it's trying to sort. So as this sort function calls, it will be passing in two instances of these to figure out what order they should go in. And so I'm going to get rid of those curly braces. We're just going to return, we want to sort these by which one has the most items in the data. So we're going to do B, we want the potentially with the larger value, right, to be this. We want this sorted from largest to smallest data set value wise. So we're just going to say B dot data dot length minus A dot data dot length. And so that will tell it whether or not B is greater and how it should be sorted. So now that that's sorted, let's just throw in a console.log and let's take a look at metadata in the console. So we'll console log that. We'll go over to our React app. Oh, metadata is not defined. It would help. What did I miss? Oh yeah, metadata is not defined. There we go. Fix that typo. And Control-Shift-I here on Windows. I think it's Command-Alt-I on the Mac there to open the inspector. You can right-click Inspect. And so we have console open here. And let's just take a look at this array. We see how it's sorted. So it's sorted at Duke, UNC, Wake Med. Notice we see the count of the data objects right there. 726, 715, and 670. So I like that. I want to process these in this order. So I don't want to have to we only have 3 pieces of data, but in a larger data set, we would want to process these in order and not necessarily hard code them by hand. And so we've got that set up where we can process that in order. So we will do a metadata, and this is after we've declared what our group data object. So we'll say metadata.forEach, and metadata is going to contain, so we're just going to say for each, we're going to call it MD, just shorten that for metadata, and then run our callback function. So for each piece of metadata that we have, so think through, make the first time this is running, we're going to have the name Duke and then a data set. So we can look inside grouped data for a piece of data at this point that nothing's in here, right? This is empty. So let's loop over the data within the metadata. So md.data.forEach D, or we can keep R. We've been using that too. It's R for each record, right? So we're looping over each metadata. Now we're looping over each record in the data set in this metadata object. And as we loop over each record, this is where we're going to have a code. So we just say, let's do const, if I could spell, we'll do const code equals record.drg code. Now the school name or the hospital name we already have because we've hard coded it up there, but we'll plug those in as well. So we'll say const name equals r.name. So that was something that we had set up here. And we don't need the key at this point because that's just built into the record. So I was just shorthanding these code and name so we have access to them. And so what we want to do, we want to look and see, have we already grouped some data for the code that we're processing? So we will say let grouped equal grouped data. And then we use the square brackets so that we can dynamically plug in the key value. Let grouped equals grouped data code. So we're just looking for this code in that grouped data, trying to pull that value out. Now, if it's never been seen before, it's going to be undefined. So we'll say if grouped triple equals undefined, then we know that we got to set grouped to something. So think back to what we want this data structure to look like. We want each of these to be inside of this. There be a key, that's the code, and then that points to another object. So grouped, this first grouping, if it's undefined, we will set it to an empty object. And I'm missing some semicolons here. I'm just hit save and that'll fix it. All right, so now that we have these grouped and we know that potentially group either already had some stuff in it or we just made it a new value, the hospital data is going to be equal to grouped, and we're just going to pass in name. And so we have hospital data equal grouped name. Now, if we're processing these in order by code, by name, this should never duplicate. So we're just doing this out of an extreme abundance of caution, but this should really never this should never hit true here. So now we'll say if hospital data triple equals undefined. So if the hospital data is undefined, then let's set hospital data. Oops, I'm just missing a const in front of that, or a let. If hospital data is undefined, then hospital data, we can't make that a const because we're redefining it. We will let hospital data. Hospital data equals an empty object as well, right? So grouped is going to contain all of the values, the school names, and then hospital data. I actually think we don't even need to go this far. You know what? Let's get rid of this. Let's just set this up real quick because we'll be able to say grouped name equals R. Because we're never going to see, there is no crisscross between schools and hospital data. So there's no point in dealing with that complication. So we look inside group data for the code that we're processing. If that's never been found before, we make a new object. Otherwise, it may already have some data in there. And in that object, we are setting a key, the name of the hospital, to the record that we're processing. And now we have to put that back in our grouped data. So we say grouped data and then we're grouping this by code. So the same way we pulled it out, we're just reversing line 51, where we said grouped equals grouped data code. Now we're saying grouped data code equals grouped. So that just turns that around and plugs it back in. So I'm going to save on that. I'm going to grab grouped data. I'm going to come down here, we'll do a console.log grouped data. And that's going to be quite a few objects. So I'm sure that's going to, drop quite a bit out here in the console. But just looking at this, this already looks correct. So if we look at Wake Med DRG, it starts at 3. It's already sorted by code and it starts at 3. UNC starts at 1 and has 2. So UNC 1, 2, 3. Wake Med 3 and 4. Duke 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just spot checking that looks perfectly right. 1 and 2, we only have Duke and UNC data. Whereas for 3, we have Duke, UNC, and Wake Med. So now we're going to put a special key in here, and we're going to drop in average price. So I'm just going to stub this out. We're going to say let AVG price. Actually, I don't want to get confused. Let the group AVG price. So let group average price equal 0. And then when we're plugging in this grouped name and setting that, we're going to set grouped AVG, you can just do dot grouped dot AVG price equals group average price. So I'm going to hit save on that. This is going to load. We're going to go back to group chart. It's going to console log out all of that again. And now we're looking, we just have an average price of 0 for all of these. So we put a new key in. So that's good. So we can take any of these groups and we say, okay, so for group 3, what's the average price? So we're heading the right direction. Now we have to actually figure out what that average price is. So this code's going to get a little sticky. So follow along with me. The first time through, we don't know how many keys there are, but we can get a count of those. So we're going to do a constant here of our group keys count. So the group keys count, so we're looking for the number of things we put in here, and I'm going to actually cut this. I'm doing this in the wrong place. After we've updated grouped, we're going to get that group keys count. So we're getting the count of keys here. So group keys count is going to be equal to grouped, and that's going to be, backing up to the front of that line, it's going to be object dot keys grouped. Now, this is where it gets tricky. We're adding another key average price here. We only want to count the keys that are actually the names of these hospitals. So we're going to do object.keys grouped, and we're going to do a dot filter here. And we're going to filter the key. And so a filter says, oh, only return the item from this array when the value is true. So when filter returns true, we're going to keep that item. So we only want to return the key when the key does not equals AVG underscore price. So now we know the number of group keys that we have. So we can add the grouped price together. And so here, instead of let group average price equal 0, we're going to let group average price equal grouped dot AVG price, right? So here's that same pattern. Look at line 64. That's where we're plugging it back in. So line 56 is just the inverse of that, where we're pulling it out. So here it could be undefined. We might not have an average price yet. So now we do need to do this check again. So we'll just copy and paste here. So we'll say if group average price is undefined, then let group average price equal 0. So we'll just start that at 0. Now once we have that, we come down here, so this is important, we've executed where we've updated that mapping. Now let's update that average price. And so to average price, we're going to have to add those things together. So we're going to loop over these group keys count, right? Let's, sorry, not that, but let's grab, I apologize. This is just group keys. So that's const group keys, const group keys count is just going to be equal to group keys dot length. So we'll need that for the average, right? We're going to add them together and divide by the number of hospitals that we're tracking data for. So now we're going to do group keys dot for each. So for each group key that we have, for each K key, the new group average price is going to be equal to group average price plus group key, or sorry, not group keys. It is going to be grouped K, right? So group keys refers to a key that's in the grouped data set. We are looping over each of those keys after we've mutated grouped. Group average price is going to equal group average price plus grouped K. So we're pulling out grouped K. We'll have a record here so we can do dot AVG price. So we're adding all those averages together. When we're done adding all those together, the group average price is going to be equal to the group average price divided by the group keys count. So a couple things we need to do. This needs a parse int. So let's parse an integer out of that average price that we're pulling off that record. Throw in 10. There's the radix. That's a base 10 number. And the rest of that looks like it should work. I'm going to round this number. So we'll just throw in a math dot round. Oops. There we go. So math.round group average price divided by group keys count. I'm going to hit save. So now we're going to go over and look at what gets logged out now. And we can see, so Duke, for one, there's an average price here. Wow, 1.3 million. So we definitely have some math that's wrong. So let's fix that. We don't need to pull the grouped average back out of here every time. We can always start the group average price at 0 because we recalculate it every time we're in here. So that was our bug. Every time this runs, we have the ability to just start at 0 because we're calculating it over and over and over. So now with that change in place, and let's get rid of this console log and this console log. So we just have our data set logging out. We can take a look in here and see that's correct. An average price of 800,000. So now we're fixed. All right, so we have our data sets. We have our average of averages. We can spot check those. Pricing for Duke, 820, 600, 400. So 8 and 6, 14, and 5 is 19. And we can just do 19 divided by 3 should look like 6.4. So just 19 divided by 3. Yeah, real close. So that's good. We're definitely good with those answers. So now we have a set of grouped data with average prices. So let's put this in our state. So we will have grouped data set to grouped data. I'll leave that console log in there for a moment. And now we got to think about how we're going to draw this chart. So we don't have a tutorial to help us this time. So if we create an SVG, that all looks good. Width and height, we were making properties up here that can be configured. And so let's configure those from properties that get passed in. And if they're not in the props, then we can just pick a default value. But we want to make these a lot smaller. So if we look again at our, did I lose our Figma? Let's get that back up. There we go. So if you think we're making multiples of these, and they're going to be a lot more narrow. So maybe we only want this to be like maybe 200 by 250 pixels, which it's circle fit, so they really need to be square. So we'll say we'll do 250 by 250, but we could make that pluggable. So we can set that as the default 250, 250, and then we could check the props. And so we could say this dot width equals props dot width, or this dot width, or this is where we could actually put our manual hardcode in, so we could just say 250. And so we can do the same thing for height. And so if there's a props.height, we can take that, otherwise use 250, and we can get rid of that. So that looks good. So we're going to draw this create SVG is going to run. We're going to keep that method. We're creating it with height. It's got a thin red solid border. Let's go look at the page. Did this update at all? Did it filter through that we changed that width and height? It did not. So something's still sticky at 600 there. So we'll keep sorting through it. Let's see. Create SVG. Create it width and height. Border. Thin red solid. Width and height. Data sort. Let's see. I am a little concerned that didn't update. Oh. Well, it did it at the right size underneath here. Let's what'd I mess up here? I messed something up. Export default group chart. Div ID bubble chart. Let's make this a div ID group chart. And this is going to be a group chart. We are not going to filter for any of these. So we'll get rid of all that. We will leave our tooltip in here. So bubble chart, the page renders like that. Group chart, strange. Yeah. So we need to sort that out. Div ID group chart. Let's see. Just looking for another reference to bubble chart ID. I don't see it. It's mad about that console log. So make a group chart, tooltip, group chart, CL, export default group chart. Let's go look at our terminal here. I'm just going to cancel. I'm going to kill that dev server there. I'm going to run that, start that again. Feel like something's hanging around when it shouldn't hang around. So when I click on group chart, still the same issue. That's interesting. So bubble chart, group chart. Oh, you know what? I bet that has to do with that router that we configured. I bet we don't have. My fault. We are not doing exact. Yeah. We're missing exact on these. So we want to exactly match chart and exactly match chart group. I'm surprised that data Duke UNC worked. That's the first place I'm going to look. Chart and chart group. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it's interesting that these are working correctly. So, you know what? Let's just throw exact on these as well. It's not going to hurt anything. I think these are working because there wasn't a higher up level. So chart was matching and it was rendering bubble chart, and group was matching after that, so it was rendering both of those components. So that's good. So that's down to the size that we probably want. Of course, our tooltip, you know, it's kind of hard to see what you're clicking on there. The tooltip works, it loads. So let's work on just drawing smaller pieces of data in there. We're not going to pull in and draw that entire data set. Oh, speaking of not drawing that entire data set, yeah, let's do one more thing. Let's make a top 20 of all this grouped data. So we have all this data grouped, so we have an average price available now. So an average of averages. So let's do a const top 20, and we're going to do top 20 of the group data values. So we've been using object.keys. So we're going to use object.values. And so we're going to take all the values of the grouped data, and we are going to sort those just like we've been doing. So we get an A and a B, right? And so we're looping over these grouped values. So we'll have that average price. So we just want to return B.average price minus a.average price. And that top 20, that's going to be a short list. Let's do a map on this. And so at this point, we will have our list of values. Let's map over that. What do we want to return? So we're mapping over the value, and let's return, object.values. We've got that entire object. We don't need the entire object. I think all we really need to know for the top 20, and it's already going to be sorted, we really just need the code. So we can just do v, what's the easiest way? We don't know for sure which objects are in here. I'm going to do curly braces so we can put a line in here. So we will do object dot values again. So object dot values of the value v, and we'll take the first value dot code. And so we will just return that. And so, failed to compile objects. That is object.values, not objects. And so now we have this top 20. I am going to do a console.log on the top 20. And let's see, this .full data. Let's go ahead and set this under group data. We'll set a top 20 in our state. And we'll save that. We'll go back over to our React app here, hit inspect, take a look in the console. So we have this array, it's sorted. There's not 20 of them. That's coming back undefined. So I got a couple things I need to fix here. Return object.values for v. Let's see. Well, this is easy enough to fix. We can just stick with these values, and then there's no need to do that mapping. After we do the sort, let's just toss in a slice, and we want to take 0 to 20. And so now we can take a look and see what top 20 is, and we can see they're sorted here. Average price 800,000, 600,000, and down, all the way down to 261,000. So that's good. So there's our top 20 procedures. We can get the DRG code out of any of those and then go do a lookup. So that'll work. We have a top 20. We have all of our data grouped. We probably don't even need to keep all that group data since we're only drawing 20, but the top 20 is what we will work off of. So we create an SVG. In reality, we want to create several SVGs. I feel like the SVG should all be separate, so create SVG is going to get called a few different times. I'm not sure if it matters that we go back. We're setting this .svg. We probably need to think through how we're structuring this data to make sure that we are appending the SVGs. We probably need a data join at this level to append 20 different SVGs. So before we move forward with that, let's just try to render one of these. So we'll leave create SVG alone. Chart let data equal this dot state dot. We're going to take top 20, and let's do the first object off of that. So we'll just do a slice 0, 1. So we have an array with just one item in it. And let's take a look what it drew. So we just have one big circle here. So the data is going to be this top 20 object. Maybe let's take the first item out of top 20, and let's actually do object dot values off of that. There we go. So now we have our two circles, and they're classed correctly because those records are passed in the same way. So if you wanted to see one that had all three, maybe let's try the fourth item in there. Oh no, that just had one. Let's look. Just the second item. So we can just do top 20 index 1. And so there it's drawn all three. And so we can click on that and our tooltips pop up. So that part just works. There's nothing we need to change. $611,000. Now this time it is different. We do want some data listed on there. Probably the best way to do that is in HTML itself. So when we're drawing this chart, I still want to focus on the idea that this component, maybe we're making a component that just draws one of those, and then we would duplicate that component 20 times. I think it's easy enough to refactor that at this point. So let's see, we have our grouped chart, and we want to put some information under that. I'm going to grab that same value. That's definitely how we want to do it. We're going to end up making a couple components here for this to work correctly. So let's go into draw chart where we're getting this data value. And I'm just going to copy that and bring that down here. So we have an H2 group chart. We have a get tooltip. We have a div ID group chart that we're referencing where we're putting that chart. This is all inside of one div. So just underneath here, instead of on top, in our mock we had it on top, I'm just going to come underneath here. Let's drop a div in, and let's drop a $sign in, and then curly braces. So we're jumping out of JSX to run JavaScript, and we'll do that same value, this.state top 21, and we'll do .avg price. So we'll get the average of averages. So did it pull it out? No, it didn't. Object values, this state top 20 first item .avg price. That should have put something down there. That $sign's down there. Values. Oh yeah, I guess it's going to be mad because values is actually not where we want to grab that. We just want this.state.top 20. So let's get rid of object.values. We just want a single number returned. So there we go. So the average of averages loaded in on the page here, 643,134. And then we can click on these to launch our tooltip and see, even though the average price, average of average is 640,000, Duke is charging a little bit more than everyone else. So our tooltips need a little help here. They're popped way off the screen. There's a way to fix that so we can detect when it's too close. Probably the easiest thing to do at this point, though, is center our page. So I'm going to stop this video here. We have it working, but it is not finalized. Basically, what I'm seeing is that this component, group chart, we actually need something that sits above it that then runs 20 different times, essentially, because we want to create 20 different SVGs. And we're just hanging on to this one element reference. So that's kind of a good point to say, yeah, I don't want to duplicate multiple elements, especially when I'm hanging on to references here. And so we just want to repeat this component many times. So that's easy enough to fix. We'll tackle that in the next video.